Hey guys, welcome back to Fix It Friday, the weekly YouTube series where we talk about video game console repairs, mods, and restorations. And for this week, we have the infamous Atari Jaguar. That's right. So this is the final console released by Atari. It's also the very first 64-bit console. And this one is kind of special. So a friend of mine got this system and he tested it to... he was purchased on eBay as broken. And when he went to go power on the system, smoke literally came out of the power supply. And I really wish I was there to film that because that would have been awesome. So as you might guess, it did not turn on. That sounds pretty bad to me. I have not yet opened this thing up, so I really don't know what is in there. But we're going to go ahead and open it up together, see how things look on the inside, and see if we can do something about it and get this system up and running again. All right, let's get started. Okay, so to get started, you have to flip over the console, and there are 4 places where you have screws to remove in the corners, so that's simple enough. When you do that and you lift up the lid, what you find is like a prison. So the motherboard is encased inside of this gigantic RF shield, which is kind of crazy. But it's actually kind of funny. The old Atari 2600s used to have a similar kind of shield, just not this big and out of control. So then from there's 4 screws that you have to take out over here, and then that actually removes the entire console as well. So we can just take the plastic off and leave it off to the side. And now we just got to get it out of its jail cell, and I'm going to do that with these pliers. Alright, so there we go, and, well, everything sort of looks okay here. Not perfect. I see that there's, like, should be a capacitor here that's missing, which is interesting, but I don't see anything exploded or any smoky or burned-looking parts, so, I mean, let's see what happens when I start to work on this system. Alright, so we are going to start by taking care of this issue here. So someone obviously has been inside of this board before. From what I can tell, the original capacitors are all still here, including this large guy here. But this one is definitely missing. It looks like someone attempted to replace it and failed. And I was actually going to look in this section of the board anyway, because this little chip right here is a voltage regulator. So these very often fail in the Atari Jaguar and are responsible for no power. And it's not showing up on camera, but I can actually feel like a little bump on the chip itself. So the chip has like some kind of a crack there, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if this chip is toast. So what I'm going to do is start by replacing the capacitor over here, and then I'm going to go ahead, because I happen to have the replacement chip, I'm going to go ahead and replace this guy too. And we'll see what happens after that. So yeah, thankfully, because of the internet, there's a nice list of capacitors. I know exactly what is supposed to be here, and I can tell from the board markings that it's supposed to go in this kind of orientation. So yeah, we're going to start with the desoldering gun. We're just going to bring it in and just heat up this ridiculous blob of solder here. Clear that out. Looks like there's still a leg left behind in there. That might have been why there was a problem. Okay, well, I think I just slurped that up into my desoldering gun, which is not ideal, but I got it out. So now from here, we're going to go ahead and replace that with a correct capacitor, and then we're going to move on and replace that voltage regulator as well. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, since I have a lot of space here right now because of that remove capacitors, I'm going to go ahead and remove the voltage regulator as well. So what I'm going to do to facilitate that is use this low melt solder called Chipquik. Basically what you do is you add this special flux to the component you're trying to remove, and then you use this special low melt solder, and it stays liquid for much longer, so it basically helps to loosen up all of the legs of the component and allows the whole component to be removed much easier. Okay, so you guys can see that normally, you're trying not to bridge legs, but in this case it's the opposite. You want to make sure that you get all these legs hit with. There we go, it's almost done. There we go, done. So it makes removal of components extremely simple. It's just sticky and gross, but that's okay. Alright, so now I got a little bit of mess to clean up, no big deal. Just take out my desoldering gun again and clean all this garbage up. Okay, and then just follow up with a Q-tip and some alcohol to get it all really nice and clean. Okay, so here is the replacement component. You can see it's a perfect match to the original. Thankfully, these are still manufactured. And the way that you tack these into place is pretty similar to stuff that you've seen on this channel before. You have to line it up and you try to get the four corners locked down, and you use flux to keep all of the different pins separate from each other. And once you've got it tacked into place, you use a little bit of solder on your tip. You kind of go back and forth on all of those pins and make sure that they're all secure. So it's a little tricky, but with practice, it's not so bad. Okay, so I've got a little flux on my, a little solder on my iron. Just trying to tack it into place on like a few pins there. So now I'm going to do the easier side, because this side isn't so crowded. So you can kind of see what you're doing a little better. So I've covered it in flux. And I'm just going to take a little bit of solder on my iron. And you just kind of tap the pins. And you watch the flux levels too. If they get too low, you got to come back, add a little more. Sorry, it's pretty stinky stuff. Okay. Normally I do this with a fan, but if I'm filming, I really can't. Okay. Now we're going to flip over and we're going to do the same thing on this side. It's a little harder because of that large capacitor that's obscuring our view, but we still have enough space so that we can get in with our iron and finish the job. Alright, so that's basically it. So I'm going to go ahead and just clean this up because it's covered in flux, and I want to make sure that the area is nice and clean here. This is a type of flux that normally doesn't leave a residue, but I always find it better to just give it a once over and clean everything up anyway. Okay, so while that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and put in the capacitor that is supposed to be here. There we go. So this part is actually pretty easy. Alright, so that's it. I'm gonna go over the board and see if there are any other issues, and then once everything dries up, I'm gonna plug it in and we'll give it a quick test and see if it's working. Alright guys, so we are back and we're ready to do our first test of this Atari Jaguar. And before we start, I just want to tell you a few other things that I did just a second ago off camera. So I was getting ready to plug everything in, and I was looking back here at this coil that is right next to the power supply. And I have no idea, whoever worked on this system before had basically left a piece of solder on that coil that was connecting straight to ground. And I'm pretty sure that's the reason why the power supply blew up. So thankfully the system was spared because, you know, this voltage regulator, I'm pretty sure was dead, so the rest of the system wasn't getting any of that power. But I think that basically there was a short straight to ground right at the power jack, and of course that led to a eventual explosion of that power supply. So needless to say, I cleaned this up, I fixed the coil, and it was nothing worth really showing on camera. It was just removing a little piece of solder that was bridging one of those points to ground. So that was really it. So yeah, so now we're basically ready to go. So with the Atari Jaguar, it's really important that you clean your game and you clean your cartridge slot. Those are notorious for getting dusty and dirty, and sometimes games don't work just because of the dirt. There's also no cartridge slot, so you know, over years the cart connector gets really dirty. So I did that already off camera. I cleaned the heck out of the game and I cleaned the cartridge connector. And so I've got this on. I'm gonna make it really, there we go. I have some sound. So let's power it up and see what happens. Ha! Okay, all right. This is the normal Jaguar boot screen, but, well, we don't have sound. And this is actually not surprising to me at all. So in the past, whenever I have repaired Jaguars and replaced that voltage regulator, usually somehow or another it ends up damaging this little tiny chip over here next to these two capacitors, and that chip is involved in audio. I can't remember the exact function, but thankfully I anticipated this and I purchased a replacement for that chip. So we're going to go ahead and replace that as well and see if we can get this system 100%. Alright, so this is the chip that we need to replace that's related to the audio. And I'm basically just going to do the same thing I did beforehand, so don't really... It's actually easier because this chip has fewer legs to remove. But yeah, Chipquik is what you want, and you just follow the same procedure as before with the flux. And that's it. Comes off very simple. Ugh, so sticky and gross. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and clean all this up. Okay, and just like before, we're gonna cover the whole area in flux and get a little bit of some solder on the tip of the iron and get it locked into place. Okay, so that's that. So I'm going to clean this again and wait for everything to dry up. We'll test this system one more time, and if we're lucky, this time it'll be fully working with sound and everything else. All right, back in a sec. Okay, so now is the moment of truth. Everything's dried off. We've got the system plugged in and ready to go. Let's see what happens. Oh, I heard a growl. And there's that Jaguar cube. Okay, so we've got sound. So this system is 100% fixed. I can't believe it, you know? This thing literally was on fire a few days ago, and now it's working. It's pretty awesome. Alright guys, so if you like this content, you know what to do. Please feel free to give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We have this kind of content every week, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!